Welcome back, guys, here on Birds 365. We are joined by Les Bowen, who John McMullen said Les was texting him during the game, just pointing out the deficiencies of the Philadelphia Eagles. Those were easy texts to send yesterday, that weren't they, Les?
Oh, boy. First of all, the coach tried to sort of half-ass the whole sitting the starters versus trying to win thing. He went in, Fletcher Cox sat just as a veteran day, I guess.
Yeah.
Swift was a little bit sick, so he didn't play. Devontae Smith, let's not play him because he's got an injury. Darius Slay, well, we could have put him on IR if he was going to miss 4 weeks, but let's just have him miss 4 weeks anyway.
I think somebody realized they were playing in MetLife last, and they're like,
well, yeah, but then they didn't really sit the key players. They sort of tiptoed in with this, the Commanders probably aren't going to beat the Cowboys, but in case they do, maybe we should try to win this. And that's it. You can't play football like that. And it was the disaster, not just on the scoreboard, but they got the quarterback's throwing hand hurt. They got A.J. Brown's knee injured, and they got Sidney Brown's out for, the rest. He'll be doing well to be back for next year's opener. And maybe Sidney Brown wouldn't have sat anyway because you can't sit everybody when you sit the regulars. But still, this was the worst possible way to do it. Would you have been down more than 24-0 in the second quarter if you had started Marcus Mariota? And
would have been tough to be down more.
It's just
they definitely half-assed
it. It's unbelievable it's yet another log on the fire here for me. People that think that this is all going to come together somehow now, and there are times when I'm kind of glad that I'm retired. Most of the time, I'm kind of like, gee, I'd like to be down there some days. I'd like to have some access, but even though I don't really want to work hard. But this week, when we're going to have to listen to all this, it's nothing, you wipe everything away, it's a new season. I have no stomach for this crap whatsoever. This is like, at this point, the Eagles are like the Monty Python parrot sketch. They're not pining for the fjords. They're gone. It's over.
Well, the only reason I say, it has more to do with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers than the Philadelphia.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, they played the worst team in football yesterday. I think they had 113 passing yards. They won 9-0. All right, they won the game, so they did that part of it. But I think Carolina had 2, and I haven't watched the game, but they had 2 touchdowns called back. They missed a couple. The Bucs aren't good. So by no means am I saying
the Giants aren't good. The Cardinals aren't good.
No. Yes. And can the Eagles lose to the Bucs? Of course. But they can beat them as well because, and that's where I said you just mentioned some of the names. Fletcher Cox had a Veterans Day out of nowhere. And I agree with you. The Eagles handled that very poorly. But he's going to play. And Slay's going to play. And AJ's going to play. He's going to be back. And Devontae should be back. And DeAndre's going to be back. DeAndre Swift. So to me, they're probably going to out-talent the Bucs and find a way to win that game. And then they're going to be a road apple for San Francisco. That's where I am with this particular team.
I'll be shocked if they get to that. I really will. At this point, the defense isn't functional.
I agree there.
Stop anything. And
I can't even, unless I say it all the time. As many problems as there are on the offense, I have a tough time getting to the offense because I can't get past the defense.
And it's not that they don't have any talent there. This is the worst defensive performance I've ever seen. Going back, the Chip Kelly years or whatever you want to bring up.
Bill Davis would be a welcome addition.
Yes. The replacing Sean Desai with Matt Patricia that alone should get a coach fired. It's just ridiculous what they're trying to do, what they look like trying to do it. I've never seen
that. To me is the best if you want Nick Sirianni fired, to me, that's got to be the lead bullet point. Changing defensive coordinators, because they can phrase it any way they want. After 13 games, one or the other, if you know early, all right, this guy just doesn't have it,
Right.
pull the trigger early, and maybe where you can make an actual difference. To do it after 13 games, and again, people would say, Les, it can't be any worse. Oh, yeah, it can. You're seeing it in living color. It's gotten much worse with Matt Patricia versus Sean Desai. No communication. Now the veterans don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It used to be just the young players. Now it's the veterans. Yeah. I mean, it's an abject disaster. There's no way to defend it.
Les, let me for conversational purposes, and I know the question is probably unfair to begin with, because the Eagles defense is the defense as a whole, and it's 25 guys. It's not just one individual. But I'm just going to pick up one for the sake of conversation. We all acknowledge the Eagles' 2 defensive coordinators this year have stunk. Sean Desai into Matt Patricia, the whole change, and could it get worse? Yeah, all that in the pile together. James Bradbury has had a lousy year, an awful year.
Yeah.
They paid him good money this offseason to retain his services, and his drop-off has been precipitous.
Yeah.
How much of that are we putting on Sean Desai, on Matt Patricia, on his position coach, on James himself, on the decision to keep James? He's a defensive guy I pick out for a very particular reason. They could have let him walk. He could have left.
Yeah.
They let a bunch of guys walk this offseason. One they chose not to let walk was James Bradbury, and his play has deteriorated before our very eyes. Is that on the DC? Is that on the decision to keep him? Is it on James himself? How do you explain the season James Bradbury had?
That's a tough one, Jody. I have to acknowledge that I would have re-signed him. You know, I thought he played very, very well. He's a smart guy. He really knows the game, which makes this kind of puzzling in some respects. I do think there are times when they've asked him to do things that he's not good at. You know, I think he'd be still pretty good in like a cover 2 type role. What do you think, John? I think he's
I've always thought he's
big and physical.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have speed and quickness anymore. But you can, guys like that are functional in the right system, like Rasul Douglas. You know, you just have to put them in the, as Nick keeps saying week after week, the right positions to be successful. And I don't think they have done that. But with Bradbury, there's the one thing that would have stuck in the back of my mind, even if I had wanted to re-sign him last offseason, which I did. He has kind of a history in his career of having a good year and a bad year. And it wouldn't shock me if he went, if they got rid of him somehow and he went somewhere else and played really well. I don't understand.
Exactly what Eagle fans want to hear.
That's kind of why he was available. You know, I mean, it's kind of like he has a good year and then he has a year where you're like, and then he comes back and plays. I don't understand it. I don't know why, but that has been a little bit of his career pattern. He hasn't been great everywhere he's been. I don't think he's the focal point of this for me. Playing without Slay for him is very, very hard. I don't think he would have done well last year playing without Slay. He didn't have to. You know, I just think with no pass rush, this scheme is dead in the water, and they have no pass rush.
Yeah. Scheme, by the way, I think is a problem. I think you see it all the time, Les. You know, when Tony Dungy took the league by storm, everybody copied him. Then everybody caught up to the defense. When Pete Carroll and Gus Bradley and Dan Quinn did everything they did, people copied them, and then people caught up to them. Now I think everybody's caught up to the Big Fangio scheme. And I think the Eagles, who pride themselves of being ahead of the curve, typically, are behind the curve. And they haven't figured this out. I truly, truly think they got to scrap the entire scheme, but that's off-season stuff.
Yeah.
In season, I think they have to simplify. But we're at week 18. What can you do at this point? Can't do anything.
Defensively, I don't know. I would seriously just give it back to Desai this week and see what happens. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but
yeah. Well, it would have sounded ridiculous to give it to Matt Patricia. So why not?
Yeah. Offensively, can you please just give the quarterback a hot read on a blitz? Because that's what's going to happen Monday night in Tampa. They're going to blitz every down because the Eagles are horrible. When faced with the blitz, they don't give the quarterback, they don't block it. They don't max protect ever. They might keep a running back in. By the way, those Rashad Penny people that were so
maybe you saw it with that pass protection. People.
He can't pick up a blitz. He can't play here. I mean, that's just how it is. That's always the way it's been for running backs here. When Deuce Staley was the running backs coach, if you can't pick up a blitz, you don't belong on the field. But you have to give the quarterback some kind of answer. And
all right, can I interject?
Smart people, keep doing this week after week after week.
Here's where,
do you understand it, John? Do you understand it?
Well, here's where I'll say maybe we're pointing in the wrong direction. And I'll say this because go watch Indy tape with Phillip Rivers. There were plenty of hot routes with Phillip Rivers. Plenty. He excelled at it. He was one of the best in the business at it. Maybe the quarterback can't do it.
But if you're running 4 verticals, which they were yesterday, I don't know what he's supposed to do. I don't see them giving him hot route. I don't see the possibility.
No, they don't. And that's what I'm saying. They did it for Phillip, and they're not doing it for Jalen Hurts. So my question
you're saying that Jalen, you can't tell Jalen if they blitz, okay, we're going to send Goddard on a slant over here. Look for Goddard.
I'm saying you can certainly tell him to do it. I'm saying if he doesn't feel comfortable doing it, if he doesn't want to do it, like I would talk to Paul Domowitch, your buddy and mine, all the time about Jalen Hurts is just not going to throw the ball to running backs. He's not a dump off guy. By the time he gets to the 3rd or 4th progression, he wants to run anyway. So you're never going to have that running back that's going to have 60 catches because you're dumping the ball off. Certain quarterbacks like to do certain things. Phillip Rivers wasn't mobile at all, right? So he understood he had to get the football out of his hands. And he said, he excelled, as I said. If you're going to blitz me, I'm going to throw it right behind your ear. Hot route looks good. Bang. I'm saying Jalen Hurts likes to do different things, and they built this offense around Jalen Hurts, and he's not particularly comfortable with hot routes and typical traditional blitz.
Let me interject and ask you a question, John. If he's not comfortable throwing to the ball to the backs out of the backfield, and he's not comfortable at throwing hot routes, what is he that good at it that he merits a $250 million contract? And can't just say, this just dawned on them. This Sirianni's coached him 2 years now before they give him the contract. Not 1, 2. 1 startup year and then the phenomenal year they had last year. Going into this offseason, do you think that they didn't think he could throw the ball out of the backfield and or pick out a hot route?
There are, yes, I think they.
And how the hell did they give him $250 million?
Well, how about look at the 3rd and 20 play to A.J. Brown. How many quarterbacks can make that play? How many quarterbacks can make? There's tons more stuff that are more important than dumping the football off to a running back. He's able to do stuff off platform, off schedule. He's able to pick up the team.
He absolutely is. He's a very good quarterback, and he hasn't even been that bad this year. He's
agree.
Probably the 4th best quarterback in the NFC this year. That's not. But
I think he's still top 10, but probably near 10.
Max protect if you're not going to give him something easy because, well, first of all, Phillip Rivers was about 6'5" or so, right?
Yeah.
But Jalen isn't. So when there are rushers in his face, I just don't see it seems illogical to me to expect him to create something out of this, or find somebody downfield. What they're doing clearly isn't working. They have to find another way to handle the blitz.
Well, I think you're definitely right. I wish there had been more evolution to this offense. And I thought
they didn't do anything in the offseason last year they thought they had the greatest thing going, and they'll just roll it out there this year and score 40 points a game. That I'm convinced of that. I mean, they
were out talenting people, and they thought, we're just going to out talent people. And other teams made adjustments, and they spent the offseason trying to stop what the Eagles are doing. They made some good adjustments, and the Eagles haven't adjusted back. I think all of that is true. But I think, for people that's saying Shane Steichen, it was the same offense with Shane Steichen. I mean, they were just more successful because
some of the calls might not have been as predictable.
No, he had a better feel. Shane had a great feel for the callbacks and setting people up. And I think, that comes with experience. Maybe that's what I talked about with Sean Desai. Young coaches have to grow into these positions. And
but Shane Steichen he didn't even have a full season under his belt going into last year. Where'd he get that experience?
Well, he took over in the Chargers game in that first season. So you're talking, if you give Brian Johnson a year and a half, people want him fired. Maybe he's there a year and a half.
Steichen was already good after a half. Steichen hit the ground running last year in what was less than a full year's time. So Brian Johnson, I'm not going a year and a half. I'm going day one. He better be ready to be more impressive game one next
but
year.
That's where I think, and I get it because people are recency bias. We've just seen 5 and 6 losses. The Eagles, for the first half of this season, for the 10-1 start, they're the top 5 offense in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. I mean, so he was pretty good early and he's struggling late, or at least if you want to blame, I think it's Nick's offense. If you want to blame somebody, I think you should blame Nick Sirianni. But that's me.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah,
but they were top 5. They were a top 5 offense.
They were top. They weren't in efficiency. They really weren't. In fact, they had terrible red zone numbers there.
Yeah, well, they did early, but then it was getting better. But they had great third down numbers. They still have great third down numbers. They had great fourth down numbers, obviously, because of the tush push. They were top 5 in yards per game, top 5 in points per game. Again, early in the season with the 10-1 start, Jalen Hurts was the leader on the betting markets for MVP. People forget that. I get, like I said, I get why, because we got to go back to 1986 and Jody's Jets to see this kind of collapse for a 10-1 team. So it's been a long time, and I get it.
Let me ask you guys, this is something I was thinking about this morning. It is such an abrupt and incredible turnaround, and there was some luck involved and some opposing players drop passes and so forth to get them to 10-1. But nonetheless, those searing losses to the 49ers and the Cowboys, those blowout losses, do you think they changed the whole team? Do you think the analogy I've used is the cartoon character running off the edge of the cliff and doesn't realize that he's, running in midair, and then he looks down.
Off the cliff, yeah. Wild E. Coyote.
Do you think something happened there where after those 2 games, do they geez, we're not that good? Maybe we were just lucky. Was there a change in the?
I think so. I think
outlook?
They were. I think they were. There was a lot of hubris in this organization. They thought they were the cat's meow, so to speak, and then they got put in their place, and I think it rattled them. And that's part of the Sean Desai thing. Les, they started thinking about making a change at defensive coordinator when they were 8-1. Who does that?
Nobody. No.
And the thing we haven't talked, at least my opinion, enough about is before they told him to go up to the press box, they pulled third down responsibilities from him. You started this conversation, Les, by saying the Eagles kind of tried to find a compromise position by sitting some guys and not playing other. I'm a compromise guy. I believe there's a lot of gray areas in life, and that you would be well advised to find a good gray area rather than going to the radical left or the radical right. But sometimes you got to make a call. You can't find a spot in the middle. And pulling third down defensive responsibilities from a coordinator and sharing the responsibility, that's just dumb. Scared, worried, not up to, no, dumb. D-U-M-B, dumb. And that's what the Philadelphia Eagles did this year.
Yeah. Les, are the Eagles too collaborative? You know Jeffrey Lurie. I mean, Jody just brought it up with the third downs. If you go back to the end of Doug Peterson, you remember Doug handed all play calling. Nobody knew it. He gave Rick Scangarella, I think it was, I get it mixed up. He gave me either red zone and Press Taylor had hurry up or vice versa. And he's handing off third downs. It's Jeffrey. It sounds good, collaboration, but somebody's got to be in charge.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, John. That's a very good. You might be onto something there. The one criticism I've had of Jeffrey is he sees things he likes on other teams and decides this is what we need to do. And that was very early in his ownership tenure. That was his, he was all about Bill Walsh, and the West Coast offense. And I don't know. I mean, Jeffrey this year is a mystery to me. He hasn't said anything.
He
rarely does, but
no, he's very.
Sal
was there, Sal Palantonio, and he saw Jeffrey coming into the locker room, and he asked me, "Is that normal?" It's very normal.
He goes to the locker room, but it's to pat guys on the back.
Exactly.
He doesn't give any. Jeffrey's not standing there in the middle of the floor,
No, he's not Jerry Jones in it. He's not doing press conferences after every game.
But one of my most vivid memories of my time covering the Eagles is that game in Detroit, Thanksgiving, Chip Kelly year, 2015. They got blown out by a horrible Lions team in Detroit, and several of us tried to find Jeffrey Lurie after that game, and he made it certain that we did not lay eyes on him. You just couldn't get any, because we all felt like this is a game that gets coaches fired, and it turned out, that was pretty much the trigger, but you just couldn't find Jeffrey Lurie to save your life.
Well, I think that's why people were looking at it, and he walked in front of all of us, made himself very visible. Obviously, he was not going to talk, but people are starting to, the groundswell is coming. Should Nick Sirianni be fired? Now, you and I were going, I think he's done enough to get another season, even if he loses in Tampa Bay. But I'm a continuity guy. Like I always look at Pittsburgh. They've had 3 coaches since 1968.
True.
I think they do it the right way. And by the way, all 3 have won Super Bowls. I think they do it the right way.
That's a very good point. For me, arguing the opposite way, I would say, how does what he's done so far inform the future? What is the plan going forward? What do we see in his response to this situation that makes us confident he somehow knows how to get this back on track? I see nothing. I see yet another, yesterday with that half-ass sit some guys, don't sit some guys, that was a disaster. Firing the defensive coordinator was a disaster. I would not just fire him. I would, if I were Jeffrey Lurie, I'd want to sit down with him, which I'm sure he's done to some extent, but I would have a season end sit down and really get, what I've said over and over is I would get, what is your plan? What do you think we need here? What's going on? And if those answers are good answers, then sure, don't fire him. But if he's as clueless as he seems, another year of this isn't going to be better.
All right, Les, here's the last question I have for you today. And it's about Nick Sirianni, but it's about everybody else in that locker room, too. Sirianni had his post-game press conference yesterday. The reporters were in there. They tried to put a spin on it. Brandon Graham, Mr. Positivity. I like the fact that Fletcher Cox at least tried to be a little bit realistic. But as of right now, they got to get ready for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, playing the way they're playing. Knowing Tampa's a beatable foe, but can they beat anybody on the planet right now? They got to come up with a game plan and a mindset to be able to win this game this week. And to be truthful, I think they're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Out of that pile of what you're throwing at the wall, what's going to work the best? If you were like, they brought Les Bowen in to give either a technical or an emotional uplifting speech to the locker room, what would you emphasize? What would be the thing you try and hang your hat on?
Well, I guess you have to go back to all that. You know, it really is nothing. A lot of teams, there are a lot of 11-win teams that haven't played great. You know, it's not the finish isn't going to define how things go next Monday night. It's going to be what you put on the field Monday night. I'm not a run the ball guy because that's an answer from 1980, but if you screwed up the quarterback's throwing hand yesterday, which it certainly looks like you did, and you hurt A.J. Brown's knee, maybe this is a good week to really lean on that. Maybe you really lean on that run game, keep the defense off the field because it can't play, and see if you can somehow get through this with a win.
Yeah.
But I don't have a lot for you, frankly. I don't.
But by the way, that was they had a huge rushing game against Tampa when they were down there earlier in the season. So, maybe that's
back when people thought you couldn't run against Tampa. That was one of the themes going in. You know?
Yeah. Vita Vea and all that. Yeah, I remember talking about it. Now, Vita wasn't healthy. I don't know if he's healthy. I don't know what's going on with Tampa Bay right now. I got to delve into it. But, I mean, that might have been the most impressive Eagles game of the season looking back. They completely dominated
Miami.
Tampa.
I thought the Miami win was a heck of a win. Of course, I thought Miami, at that point, Miami looked like one of the top couple teams in the AFC.
Yeah.
Miami's kind of about where the Eagles are without the spectacular, swoon at the end, which, by the way, John, you mentioned the Vic Fangio system, and everybody says it was such a shame that they didn't get to hire Vic Fangio.
Vic gave up 56 to stick in Baltimore. Now, Baltimore's a great team, but if you give up 56.
Is Miami's defense blowing it out right now? I haven't seen
it. They
56 is 56. I don't care if you're giving up to the Rams' greatest show on turf. That ain't good.
Late against Josh Allen last night either. Fangio's defense couldn't get a big stop. Les Bowen, thank you very much for jumping in on late notice, no less. We appreciate that even more. Les, thank you very much.
Thank you, Les.
Get you on soon enough again. Thanks, bud.
Thank you, guys. You know, retired people, we're just sitting around.
You got downtime. Yeah, you feel
go pick up some dog poop. I don't know.
There we go. I got to do that same thing.
And then throw it at the wall and see what sticks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Les, thank you very much. All right, we got to take our final time out here, come back. I do want to address one of the streamers who made a point or attempted to make a point, and I do want to talk about it. It gets the heart of what John and I do here every day, or at least from my standpoint, it does. I want to speak from John, but do want to address one of the points we made here on Birds 365. We'll use that to put a bow on the show.